expected points, clean sheet odds, and who is the best captain. This video has got all of the information you need to know ahead of Game Week 9. Right, we're going to start the video off then by going through the top players for expected points. According to Fantasy Football Hub, there's a link to sign up to see this data for yourself in the description. We're going to do that by position. I've got a view of just one game week, so Game Week 9 in isolation. And then I'm going to look at the top players by position for the next 5 game weeks. So you get an idea of, the best players for just this 1 week. Then I would suggest if you're looking to bring a player into your team, you want to be looking more than just 1 game week ahead of time, right? So I've gone for 5 and we'll see that in a second. So goalkeepers for Game Week 9 then. Ederson is top, 4.7 expected points for him, followed by Flecken, Emiliano Martinez, David Raya, Pickford and Verbruggen. I've said this on all of my live streams and videos that I've spoken about goalkeepers. For me in FPL, the best goalkeepers in the game are ones that keep an average amount of clean sheets but get consistent saves, and you need both of them. You need the points to be propped up by the occasional clean sheets and also saves. And I'm just looking at the top goalkeepers here, the top 2 in Flecken and Ederson, and I think they're 2 sort of extremes. So Ederson, his team concedes so few shots that he never gets saves bonus, and well, recently they've also been conceding goals so he doesn't get clean sheet points. So ultimately, the clean sheet odds for Man City against Southampton are looking good, which is why he ranks so highly. But his points are never going to be propped up by saves bonus. And Flecken, for example, is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. Brentford have played 8 games now, not kept a clean sheet yet, but he is the leading keeper in the league. I still believe he's the leading keeper in the league for saves made. Then there's a couple keepers on this list. I'm looking at Martinez and Pickford. Across the season, I believe they will keep an average amount of clean sheets, say 8 to 12 clean sheets, but they will get saves bonus every game pretty much, or consistently get a decent amount of saves. And that for me tips the balance of better goalkeepers. So you want a bit of a mix of saves and clean sheets basically. And just a quick look at the next 5 game weeks. We've got Raya as the number 1 goalkeeper. I would say he is, once Arsenal have a full set of defenders again, I would say he kind of is in that sort of category. He has proved that he's made a decent amount of saves so far this season. And statistically, over the last couple of years, Arsenal were the best defence in the league by quite some margin. So it makes sense that he's the top. You see Ederson up there, Flecken as well. Kelleher of Liverpool, who's obviously playing in place of Alisson. You've got Pickford. Onana, who I really like as well. For me, if I were to pick my 2 favourite goalkeepers in FPL right now, I'd probably say it's Pickford and Onana, and then Martinez is up there as well. So these are your top 5 keepers for the next, for the next 5 weeks. So defenders then, and the list is dominated basically by the expected Man City players that are predicted to start. The Man City players that are predicted to start, I should say. And that's because they're playing Southampton, a game where all of kind of the data, the odds, the algorithms expect them to keep a clean sheet, or at least they have the highest clean sheet odds of any team basically. So the 4 predicted Man City defenders to start are leading the way for expected points. Then you've got Gabriel, who obviously carries probably the most goal threat of any defender in the league, just with how dangerous he is from set pieces. He does have Liverpool though, so I would expect Arsenal to concede in that game, particularly without Saliba. But I just think the goal threat that he has the potential to carry from set pieces is sort of carrying him up this leaderboard. Then you've got Collins and Pinnock of Brentford. Both of them have got Ipswich at home. Again, good clean sheet odds. Well, predicted clean sheet odds for them. Obviously, Brentford are yet to keep a clean sheet, so they're up there on the list as well. And looking at the next 5 game weeks, a bit of a further sort of expansion of things. Guardiola is the top defender for expected points over the next 5. I really like Guardiola, don't get me wrong, and I do think I regret selling him a few game weeks ago. Well, obviously I do. He scored a couple of goals since that point. However, Man City, right, they have got a game at the weekend and a game midweek up until the next international break, which I think makes for 6 fixtures in 3 weeks. And all of the Man City assets outside of probably Haaland and Ederson, even Haaland could get rested in some of these games. I just don't think you can back anyone to play all the games. And I would kind of apply that to Guardiola too. It wouldn't be a massive surprise to see him potentially getting dropped in one of these upcoming games. It's just my opinion. Gabriel's up there. Again, I would say the Liverpool game is a little bit of a worry. I do think they probably concede in that one, particularly without Saliba. But after that, the fixtures are looking, semi-decent. And also, Arsenal were just statistically the best defence in the league over the last couple of years. So he's always going to be up there and with his goal threat as well. Likewise, Trent. Liverpool have been very, very frugal defensively so far this season. He is putting up by far and away the best expected goal involvement of any defender in the league so far. But he's only got one attack in return. So he's definitely underperformed his expected data. Ben White's up there as well. Similar sort of reasons to Gabriel, I would say. Aït-Nouri is basically playing as a winger for Wolves, and the Wolves fixtures do kind of switch in upcoming game weeks, and you've got Robertson and Dalot up there as well. So I've spoken about, naturally, more premium defenders are going to come towards the top of the list for predicted points. But the argument that I would have over the next few game weeks at least, there just aren't that many clean sheets to go around in my mind. Man City are conceding goals, Arsenal are conceding goals, Liverpool have tough fixtures. I would make the argument, particularly if you're wildcarding in something like Game Week 12, Game Week 13 sort of timescale, which I think quite a few people are going to do. I would make the argument right now is it actually worth owning premium defenders in FPL? Because other than Guardiola, none of them are really getting that many attacking returns at the moment. None of them are keeping that many clean sheets. You could save money, buy someone like Aït-Nouri, maybe a Forest defender, someone like Dalot, for example, and then just spend money elsewhere. Just a suggestion, but these are your top defenders for the next 5 game weeks. All right, midfielders then. Palmer tops the list, interestingly. Newcastle at home, followed by Phil Foden. That's, of course, if he actually starts against Southampton. Again, I'd say that's probably, same case as I just said with Guardiola, right, with those Man City players. They've got 6 fixtures in 3 weeks. You would definitely have to ask the question, is Foden going to start every game in the Premier League? I'm not sure, which would put me off picking him, in my opinion at least. Salah, given that Saliba is out for that Arsenal game, I would suggest that Arsenal are a less worrying prospect defensively, I think. But just something to bear in mind there. I still think Salah is a great option. 6.3 expected points. Mbeumo, Ipswich at home. I think he's a bit of a cheeky differential captaincy shout if you were to ask me. Son's got Crystal Palace away. Obviously got back from his injury with a goal. Eze still hasn't played at the time that I'm recording this video, but I think he's always going to be a good asset in FPL, right? Kind of ticks all the boxes of a good player. On penalties, well, potentially sharing them with Mateta. Plays 90 minutes every game, just starts every game. I think he could be a really good option. And you've got Saka as well. Liverpool at home for him. Obviously, same fixture as Salah, just reversed. And I'd say question marks as to whether he'll be back for Game Week 9. I suspect he probably will be. So over the next 5 game weeks then, you see a little bit of a change in terms of Salah and Palmer. The order switches because the Liverpool fixtures get a little bit better, at least for predicted points for Salah after Game Week 9. So yeah, the point switch, but it's not all that much. 0.8 expected points in it between Salah and Palmer, and what's that? 1.8 million in terms of their price. So yeah, 0.8 million, 0.8 expected points over the next 5 game weeks, 1.8 million in terms of price difference. So you do the math yourself to see if it's worth swapping one for the other, etc. But I'd say it's definitely a consideration of mine that I've been making over game weeks gone by. Saka's up there as well. So basically, the top 5 midfielders are the 5 most expensive midfielders in the game, and I guess that's to be predicted, right? Salah, Palmer, Saka, Son, and Foden. You kind of expect those guys to be the best, followed up by Mbeumo, and he's still in these algorithms, and he's yet to play in game week 8. So we can't say for sure, if his form's changed or whatever. But the algorithms still love Eberiche Eze, and he's still in my team at the moment, so he could still be a good option. And finally then, the forwards. So I'm going to talk a little bit about whether you should triple captain Haaland in a second, basically. He's got Southampton at home, 9 predicted points. Had he been in good form, that's a game where you would suggest triple captaincy is a good idea, but I think you'd have to take a step back and really think about it given the current form that he's in. You've got Isak up there as well. Should he start against Chelsea, he's predicted to do quite well. Watkins, Chris Wood, Havertz, Wissa, who's obviously back for Brentford. 5.9 million is a great price for the numbers that he's putting up. I think he could be a really nice option. And then you've got Nicholas Jackson, who's in really good form for Chelsea at the moment, up there as well. And then for the next 5 game weeks, a very similar list to the one you've just seen, basically. Haaland, Isak, Wood, Havertz, Watkins are all up there. Solanke's up there as well, and likewise Cunha. I think Solanke, 5.1 predicted points in Game Week 9, is just a little bit less than Jackson, so doesn't quite appear on this list. And I guess one thing to say about Solanke actually is his average position. He's been playing a little bit deeper, and I've seen other people in other FPL content creators and Spurs fans have been suggesting that the the Spurs front three are playing in a similar fashion to the Liverpool front three of old, where the centre forward is actually the deeper lying player and the two wingers are the ones that play more advanced. And that seems to be, over the last couple of games at least, what we've seen from Spurs. So just one to monitor on Solanke. I think for the time being, there's no reason to sell him. But if he continues playing quite as deep as he has been, he might not be such a good option. And then Cunha makes the list as well. Obviously, the Wolves fixtures turn after Game Week 9, and he's predicted to do quite well. All right, so the next thing I wanted to cover is captaincy. And then obviously the question that, well, some people might still have is, do I think it's worth triple captaining Haaland for Game Week 9? And we'll get onto that in a second. So I think the captaincy at least is pretty clear. You know, Haaland with Southampton at home, he's not been in the best form recently, I'll admit, but the expected points data at least are really supportive. You've got the Fantasy Football Hub model here, 9 expected points for Haaland. Second place is Palmer on 7.4. So that's a pretty big gulf between the two players. And the FPL review, I keep saying Fantasy Football review, it's FPL review, which a lot of people like to look at. Some do as gospel, but some just really think that it's the best projection sort of data that you can get for fantasy football, basically. They've got Haaland number 1 as well, 8.9 expected points. Second place is Foden, who I would say is, you know, you can't really guarantee he's going to start. So for me, I think Haaland is, well, the second player to Haaland is in Mbumo, because I personally don't like Foden as an option at the moment. And he's way ahead of anyone else in this model. So I think the captaincy, for me at least, is clear in that Haaland is the outstanding option. But obviously the question is it worth using the triple captain? So the next thing I wanted to talk about is it worth using the triple captain on Haaland? And looking at his data across the whole season, yes, you know, it's looking really strong. 10 goals from 8 starts, really, really good, right? 69 points already from 8 game weeks this season. However, his form has really dropped in the last 3 games. And I don't think that's like by accident, if that makes sense. If you have seen the news around Haaland recently, he's just had a child born. So you could probably imagine what his life at home is like at the moment. And also before the international break, I think it was before the international break, he lost, you know, quite publicly a close friend of his. That's quite a lot to go through, I think, as a human being. And I think in some ways that goes to suggest that the drop in form that we've seen of him. I also think he could be carrying like a physical knock or something. He obviously played good minutes for Norway during the international break as well. So he's not really been rested at all. And yeah, up until that Newcastle game, things were really good. And then Newcastle kind of did a job on him. And then Fulham and Wolves, he's not really been present at all. And that Wolves game, didn't put up a single shot, 0.02 expected goal involvement. He basically disappeared in that game. So, you know, across the season, he's put up decent numbers. 2 consecutive hat-tricks and a brace in game weeks 2, 3 and 4. Then after that, 3 blanks in a row. However, he is playing Southampton, who I personally think are, you know, attack defence together are the 20th best team in the league, right? They are the worst team in the league, in my opinion. And I've pulled up total goals against and expected goal against so far this season. And Southampton are definitely one of the bottom teams, right? They've conceded the second most goals in the league this season. The most was obviously Wolves, who Haaland just blanked against. And they're the 3rd worst team for expected goals against. So you're looking at Southampton and they're pretty woeful defensively, basically. And having watched Southampton a few times this season, I think they're the worst team in the league. So, you know, you've got 2 conflicting arguments here. One is that he's not in the best form at the moment. And then one is he's playing, you know, statistically one of the worst teams in the league. I would also say there's another factor when it comes to triple captain in Haaland, and it's whether he gets a double game week or, you know, there is a double game week later on in the season where you could use it instead. And it certainly looks like there will be. So the Carabao Cup final and FA Cup semi-finals will cause a blank game week at some point later on in the season. If I remember rightly, it could be game weeks 31 and 34 that are doubles. I might be wrong, but there are expected to be 2 double game weeks later on in the season. And the teams that double game week will be the ones that get to the FA Cup semi-finals and Carabao Cup finals, right? And that suggests to me that it's going to be, well, that will be 8 teams in the semi-final. No, 4 teams in the semi-final, not 8. 4 teams in the semi-final and 2 teams in the final. So there will be 6 teams. It could all obviously be the same team, depending on how far they go. But, you know, there's 6 opportunities there for potential double game weeks. And you got to think Man City probably either reach the Carabao Cup final or FA Cup semi-final, or other good players similar to Haaland do the same. So I do think that basically there are going to be double game weeks later on in the season. So for me at the moment, if you were to ask my opinion, current form for Erling Haaland, and yes, Southampton I think are the 20th worst team in the league, but they're not actually the worst defence statistically. That's Wolves for actual goals conceded. And Ipswich and Leicester are actually slightly worse for expected goals conceded as well. So yeah, with current Haaland form, I think I would probably avoid it right now. One more thing I wanted to look at on the subject of Haaland as well was just upcoming captaincies. So, you know, Haaland, he's the most expensive player in the game. He's not in great form at the moment. And I think after game week 9, there is an argument that you don't really need him in your team because, you know, spending 15 million, or 15.4 million or whatever he's worth in the game at the moment on a player, you're going to kind of waste that money if you don't captain him, in my opinion, or at least most weeks captain him. And what I've pulled up here is the next, 7 game weeks. I haven't included Saka on this list because I don't think he is the best captain in any of these weeks. But I would say there are 5 players in FPL that I would probably feel comfortable putting the armband on. That being Haaland, Salah, Palmer, Son and Saka. But like I said, I don't think Saka really has a true captaincy opportunity over the next 7. But these 4 definitely do. And after game week 9, where Haaland's got Southampton, I think is probably the clear best captain. Game week 10, Salah's got Brighton, Haaland's got Bournemouth, Palmer's got United, Son's got Aston Villa. You know, I think there's a genuine alternative to Haaland there. You're looking at game week 11, Haaland's got Brighton, Salah's got Villa, Palmer's got Arsenal, and then Son has got Ipswich, who are, I think, we just looked at the stats there. Yeah, Ipswich are the 2nd worst team in the league for expected goals conceded. Game week 13, Haaland's got Tottenham, Salah's got Southampton, Palmer's got Leicester. I think there's a genuine captaincy alternative there. Game week 13, Haaland's got Liverpool, Son's got Fulham, Palmer's got Villa. Game week 14, Haaland's got Forest, who, you know, are actually one of the best defences in the league. They're really quite good defensively, whereas Palmer's got Southampton. I'd suggest that's a genuine captaincy alternative. And then in game week 15, when he's got Crystal Palace, Salah has Everton. So beyond game week 9, I think for the next 6 game weeks after that point, there's a genuine captaincy alternative to Haaland. So yeah, the question, I guess, is, do you actually need Erling Haaland in your team? I'm not going to answer that question now because I think I'm probably going to keep hold of him. But I definitely think there's an argument, particularly considering that sort of upcoming captaincy chat that I've just gone through, that you could go without him. Right, finally, I just wanted to go through the clean sheet odds. Now, usually, I don't like to suggest defenders or defences with below 30% clean sheet odds. But there are only 5 teams in this whole list that are actually above 30%. I'm looking Man City atop 58% to keep a clean sheet against Southampton. Will that actually come to fruition, though? I'm a bit sceptical about that, I would say, with just how many goals they've conceded this season. Brighton 38 against Wolves, Brentford 36 against Ipswich, Villa and Tottenham both on 31, and then you've got a whole boatload of teams here on 29. Chelsea, Fulham, Forest, Arsenal, Everton and Leicester. And you can see the rest of the teams there. I'd probably say Leicester and below, I would be hesitant starting defenders on. I always think it's useful to look at these stats because if you've got to decide between a couple of defenders to start, for example, looking at the clean sheet odds is a good way of doing so. Doesn't really help me at this stage though, because I've got both Gabriel and Aina, and I'm a little bit confused as to which one to start. And I don't think these clean sheet odds actually help me at all, but hopefully they help you a little bit. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that. I feel like I gave a lot of information there, and it was a little bit Haaland heavy, this video, but you know, he's the most expensive player in the game. He's the cause of a lot of skepticism and controversy, I would say, at the moment around the FPL community. So I thought it'd be worth spending a bit of time talking about him. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments what you think of those player recommendations and Haaland opinions that I had, I guess. And yeah, if you haven't already, please subscribe. It should be just there on your screen. Thank you very much for watching. I will catch you in my next video.